Today, we're going to talk about 7 ways you could make your college essays completely stand out, including specific examples that got into Ivy League colleges. Now, I think it's really important for us to start from the beginning, essentially, where we talk about why it's important and the steps you need to take in order for you to make sure your college essay actually stands out. Because listen, everybody's going to be watching this video. You already know BMO is, for example, famous. So everyone's going to watch our video. Everyone's going to go on Google and get tips. The craziest thing some applicants could do is go and imitate exactly what they see in this video and some other video, Dr. Google or whatever. So I rather we spend some time today with my co-host to tell you how to fish instead of giving you fish, meaning we're going to teach you how to do this on your own based on your own experiences. Even if you don't think you have extraordinary experiences or crazy stats or you didn't go to Africa to build homes for the homeless. None of that stuff is necessary to make your college essay stand out. And we're going to tell you how to do that. Very quick introduction. My name is Behrooz Momeni. I'm the CEO and founder here at BMO. My co-host is Ranza, who is our director of consulting. Let's first express the strategies we use with our own students to help them make their college essay stand out. Then I'm going to give you 5 red flags you need to avoid. Then we're going to go into examples. You notice I'm intentionally not giving you examples right up front because, again, I don't want you to copy the examples. The examples are just examples. And I want to make sure you don't take this as a, hey, this is an example. I'm just going to use it as my own. You cannot do that. You need to learn the process. Do it on your own. One, brainstorm a story that connects the dots that you're going to talk about. 2, make sure it's personal based on your own unique experiences, not something random and generic. 3, stick to a maximum of 1 to 3 main points. Write a fantastic introduction that captivates your audience. Next, the body of your essay has to solve the cliffhangers that you introduced in your introduction. The body also has to have specific examples and stories from past experiences that relate to the overall story. And lastly, you have to write a concluding paragraph that leaves the reader wanting more. They want to learn more about you. So Ranza, let's go through these one by one and break them down. So first thing is, brainstorming. I think it's pretty common sense, but not everybody actually does proper.
It seems like it's common sense. Yes. I think what we usually find is that the student is so eager and they just want to jump right into it and they start writing it, formulating it already in the intro, already have an idea of what they want to kind of, put into their statement. And that's fine. To have ideas is great, but to really truly be effective in your strategy, you have to first have a foundation and a game plan, a roadmap. And that's what we would normally say in a brainstorming. So a brainstorming, in our session, if you have the opportunity to work with us, we, do one-on-one, we learn about your story. But for yourself, if you're doing this on your own, you really just want to essentially write out your story from beginning to end, because at this point, you don't know what's critical, what's not critical. So really, from whether that be from, birth, your upbringing, the community that you're in, if you had an immigration story, just first write out your entire journey from beginning up until this very point. And then we kind of piggyback off that.
Great. The next point, now you're brainstorming. We said it's really important to make sure this is personal based on your actual experiences, not some random generic stuff you read on, I don't know, some forum or Dr. Google. So Ranza, I'm sure you've seen a lot of essays where this person had the same experience than 10 other applicants just before them. Like there's nothing specific, it's just generic. There's no story behind it. It's political. It's like full of, things you would find if you Googled college essay examples. Like, immediately this person has just researched the topic.
Yeah, it can be challenging. Now, I will say that in some cases, there will be some themes that overlap. And specifically, if you're applying to, one particular program that draws on one or two things that you're interested in, it's common that other individuals are going to be interested in that. But what we really like to encourage is, something that's personal to you, is all in the detail and all in really how you interpret your experience. So many people have research experience, right? It's all about the details of the interactions, the observation, and then more importantly, your takeaways. What did you learn from that experience? So whenever we stress, picking out what was meaningful in your journey, the first thing we like to tell a student is you need to make sure quality over quantity. Every student wants to just jam pack all of their paper with everything that they've possibly done from birth, like I mentioned, up until now, but not all of that is valuable. Not all of that is useful, not even if it's relevant. And it's actually going to hurt a lot of the main things that you've experienced because it's so big. You might dilute all that paperwork, and people don't want to sit there and read something that's filled with so much information that they can't keep up or digest it. It's just too much. So we normally say, what was the first moment of your aha, right? Your aha moment is what made you curious, right? What made you first curious to learn about X, Y, and Z? And then the second is, what confirmed the journey for you? And then the third thing is what's reaffirmed that journey for you. So first thing could be something as taking a class and learning about that subject, and then asking questions to the teacher or the professor. A moment of confirmation could be, you did an internship or you did a co-op placement and you had insight and you gained more knowledge or access to that area. And you're like, hey, I really do love this topic. I really do love this major. And then the third thing is, would be related to that field. And that would be another sort of research opportunity, or you shadowed or did some sort of interning that really gave you further insight into that field that reaffirmed it for you. Some people don't always have that luxury of getting close access to a particular program, but at least close access to the skills that are valued by that program. For me, I would say is just as important as getting, insight. So that varies for everybody. Those three things I mentioned, it doesn't have to be three things. It could just be one experience, but it does vary from people. And I think more importantly, and we're going to go into it, it's really how you put it together in the paper.
Makes sense. This leads us to the next tip that we had for a perfect college essay, and it's sticking to 1 to 3 main points. I actually like students stick to one single point or one sort of a story that tells that delivers the entire point they're trying to make in their essay. I think this is pretty straightforward. The idea is don't try to include, just like Ronza said, everything you've ever done from birth. No. 1 to 3 max. In fact, the most memorable essays talk about one thing only, because the rest of the stuff is all in the application. Like, for example, you don't need to talk about your stats, for example, your GPA or your SATs. Nobody cares about that. They already have that. That stuff should not go in your essay, for example. Let's go to the next one, because this was pretty obvious. The next tip we have for writing that perfect college essay is writing an absolutely captivating introductory paragraph, and most importantly, that introductory sentence. You have about 3 seconds to get the attention of admissions committees if you're applying to an Ivy League or a top tier school, because they get 60, 70,000 applicants. Think about that. And we're going to talk about, what else you could do, but the only way you could go through that filter is to capture their attention, which is very little attention, by the way, for you. With respect, they don't really care about you. They don't have time for you. You have 3 seconds to get their attention. So, Ronza, can you tell us how this is related to that psychological effect we always talk about, privacy effect, and what strategy is best? How much time do we have to spend on that introductory paragraph?
This is something I would encourage not just in papers, but later on in their application journey, if there's interviews or anything of that nature. It's so important because, as we mentioned, primacy effect is that individuals tend to recall those first few moments, whether it be reading the first few sentences of a paper, or in our case, we'd say literally the first sentence, or if it's conveying a story, the first few things that you say out loud. It's very important to capture the attention. It sets the tone, and right away they already have some sort of judgment of your candidacy. And I know that sounds a little ridiculous, but it's human nature. It happens right away. There's a lot of ways that you can be tactful in approaching this, and it depends on, and this is why we say, make sure you have a roadmap. It actually depends on what you've said in your body of paragraphs and what your story, whether that's 1 point or 2 or 3 points, as we mentioned, no more than 3. It depends on that, which is why we suggest to do the introduction actually last. Introduction and conclusion should be left to the last thing that you do once you've confirmed your experiences. Why? Because then you could personalize the introduction. It won't just start off with, I love this program, or I love this university, or I've always been interested, something that's very boring, to put it politely, would be just something that's more common. So you want to make sure that you want to avoid those cliches altogether. And I would say, depends on the heart of the story. You can jump right into an observation, interaction, that aha moment, that curious moment, that conversation you had with that professor. Perhaps it was something as ridiculous as watching a show. Who knows? Whatever your story was, your journey was, that's why it's important to sit there with a roadmap, filter those experiences, so then those introduction, that paragraph, the conclusion, all of that could be really creative and cool.
100%. My favorite college essay introductory sentences go right into a story, right in the middle of a story, or a controversial statement. They never start with, I love this college, or I want to study. Who cares? Everybody wants to study something. Captivate me as the admissions officer. Why do I have to read one more sentence from your essay when I have 60,000 other essays to read today? So that's a very important mindset to have when you're competing in the Ivy League. Now, the next 2 points we want to make is about the body paragraphs. Obviously, you have to stick with the word limits you have. In fact, you should even try to write less than that instead of more, or even the limit even. The 2 points we talked about was, the body should solve the cliffhangers in the intro. The body must have specific examples and stories. I feel like we mentioned this already. Ranzo, do you have anything else to add to this?
Yeah, and it goes without saying that it should still be structured like an academic essay, right? Someone should still be able to read it. It should have a good flow. Transitional sentences are so critical to ensure a good flow. I would say, don't try to jam everything into one paragraph. I know that we're going to 101 in terms of like structuring and grammar and sentencing, but I've seen it a lot where people try to do too much in one paragraph. To keep it easy for the reader, for anyone that's going to be looking and reading and going in your journey, is stick to one experience, one paragraph, right? And then in the case that you mentioned, Bruce, if that's one experience altogether, well, then, you know how to break down an experience depending on how big it was, what happened. Focus one paragraph on one sort of item, and then even one sort of reflection, like what you learned could be all organized in that experience. So as a reader, while I'm going along, you're connecting the dots for me. Oh, you got that experience. Oh, that taught you X, Y, and Z. Oh, that's awesome. Cool. Now the next point. You shouldn't be punching it in the way I'm saying it. Obviously, you want to make it like a good story, but you still need to make sure that you're cognizant of how to organize it, and transitionals will help.
Makes sense. Now, last tip we have for a fantastic college essay that gets you into any Ivy League you desire is writing a concluding paragraph that absolutely leaves the reader wanting to learn more. A lot of people struggle with the concluding paragraph as well, and they usually just say the same thing they've said before with the help of the thesaurus, thinking that because their teacher in high school taught them concluding paragraph has to be the same. It's just no. Yes, in a way, but not exactly that. It can be the same exact paragraphs you used and just you change the words. That makes no sense. Obviously, you can't do that. Two, I actually like concluding paragraphs that make me feel like there's still something I want to learn. This was too interesting. I need to see this person. And you know, some of the Ivy Leagues, they might have additional screening steps. Some of them might want to interview you. Some of them might want additional information from you. So to get to that stage, you have to give them an excuse to actually invite you for the next stage. That happens right in the concluding paragraph, I feel like, for a lot of people. And the beauty of the concluding paragraph is if it's very memorable, that contributes to the recency effect. Recency, we talked about primacy effect for the introductory paragraph. Recency is for the concluding paragraph. And these two psychological hacks you could use are essentially based on the premise that humans will remember the very first body of a piece of information and the very last part of that body of piece of information best than anything that happens in the middle. This is why we keep saying you may spend the most amount of time on your introduction, after that on your concluding paragraph, and then the balance of the time goes into the whatever's in the essentially the meat of your essay. People who don't understand that spend a lot of time for that middle, which is not memorable. Remember, in fact, if your introduction is not good, nobody got your beautiful body paragraphs because it just went into reject and burn file. You know, some admission officers, they actually have a pit burning right beside them as they read. It just goes literally, there's like flames. No, I'm kidding, but generally, they do not have any patience because of the job and the repetition and the fact that they have high standards. Right? You want to go to Harvard, you better send an essay that's Harvard quality to attract their attention. The bonus final tip is don't use any fancy words, even if you're applying to Harvard. Best to use, I don't know, a fifth grader level of English. That doesn't mean having typos and grammar and structure issues like that, but your vocabulary does not need to be fancy. The minute you start using fancy vocabulary is the minute that the essay doesn't really sound like you, more likely that it doesn't make sense anymore, and it's going to read weird, and again, reject and burn pile. So those were the tips. I'm going to go into any red flags, unless Ranza, you have any additional tips for how to make this college essay absolutely a standout.
I would just say one other thing for the conclusive paragraph, because it's your last chance to really convince them for that last impression. One thing that I've seen work really well with students is depending on how you started it, whether it be a question, whether you posed some sort of quote or anything of that nature, the conclusive paragraph brings it together and it really does hold the paper together. So if you decide to be really creative in the beginning, you cannot leave the readers in the end. You have to bring it together in that conclusive paragraph.
Exactly. If you had a question, because sometimes you could start that first sentence would be a question. You got to have answered that in the conclusion. Now, here are 5 red flags for college essays. Red flag number 1 for college essays: typos or missing instructions. Red flag number 2 for college essays: poor grammar, spelling, the obvious stuff. Red flag number 3 for college essays: lack of preparation. It looks like the person wrote the essay the night before. Red flag number 4 for college essays is indicating a lot of different experiences that were all short-term, all of them essentially not a lot of impact, but clumped together into the essay to give it some impact. And last but not least, our 5th red flag for college essays is the introduction and the conclusion. They're completely disconnected. What started doesn't end, and what's ended doesn't have any relevance to what's said before. It's like confusion. So those were our red flags. Ranza, you have anything to expand on before we give some examples of really good essays for Ivy League colleges?
I honestly, that instruction piece at the first red flag, and I know it might sound funny to some people, but I've seen a lot of students think that they know what the question's asking and actually not know. And that error in itself sets like it's catastrophe for the
It's
rest of
over.
the
Game is
answer
over.
because you didn't know how to interpret the question. And I've seen that happen one too many times with the students. Sometimes I've seen where a question could be twofold and you address the first one and neglect the second. So that the first part of just reading what it is that they're asking for is very important. And the second part to that is knowing how to respond to what they're asking for. That's where the brainstorming comes in. But let's first know what we need to do. Very important.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if you don't answer the question, it's over.
It's game over. Yeah,
It just
unfortunately.
seems like you either can't read. It's not good. You're going to college, you don't know how to read. Like, imagine you're applying to Harvard and this person, they can't even read. Bye. Or you can't follow instructions, or you cannot communicate. Either of those are
Yeah.
bad, 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 bad. Bye. So, Ranza, we provided 7 strategies to write a perfect essay for college. 5 college essay red flags we also provided. Now, can you guide us through an example essay and maybe tell us, maybe you could read it off and then we could dissect to see what's good about it, what's bad about it. We'll go from there, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will read the prompt so we're all aware. And just a disclaimer, do not use the details mentioned in this essay. Some of them might lend to someone that was very fortunate of their experience. So do not compare and contrast in that regard, but we'll break it down of what's important. So the prompt reads, the Harvard College Honor Code declares that we hold honesty as the foundation of our community. As you consider entering this community that is committed to honesty, please reflect on a time when you or someone you observed had to make a choice about whether to act with integrity and honesty. And then they indicated 650 words as the word limit for that essay prompt. So the sample begins with this, and I could end after the first paragraph first, and then we can go into that intro. I sit in a hot SUV winding its way over a bumpy African road, a scarf protecting my nose and mouth as dust streams in through the window. Returning from a teaching session with a Maasai woman and the other students, excited chatter dances around me as they discuss our invitation to the Maasai coming of age ceremony. The ceremony centers on the circumcision of prepubescent boys and males and females, often performed with a sharp rock and no anesthetic. It is a rite of passage for the Maasai. My stomach is a tight knot, picturing the children we met today and imagining the painful procedure they will soon undergo. The other students excited about the feast and intricate costumes hope that accepting the invitation will strengthen our bond with the community. I, however, am weighed down by a profound sense of unease when it comes to the main attraction, the circumcisions. Further, the leader of the organization is absent. Should she not be consulted? Do I go along with the group and participate in something that I'm morally opposed to, or do something about it? So that's the first opening introduction. And it is
That's very, very captivating.
very captivating. And to be quite honest, I would probably want to reread that over just to really kind of let that sink in. But as you can see from that introduction, sitting in that SUV, the details in there. And we're not saying you have to be a novelist and you have to sit there and be this great writer, but I will be honest, having read so many applications from our students, there are ones that still till this day I recall because of those details.
Details,
So
yeah.
details are honestly quite important because
So that some tips we could give for details is, if you're describing a story, you could talk about anything that you could provide with words that would elicit a feeling. Temperature, color, smell, sight, right? You could explain all of those, and it will make for a way better story. So you have to be a good storyteller, essentially, if you want to write a good essay.
It's true. It's true. And you can even see in that first sentence, instead of saying it was a hot day,
Yeah.
right? And, it was dusty and I was nervous. You don't even have to say that you were nervous. There are details in there that could suggest that you could be nervous and that it was hot and that, there was a lot of chaos happening. So I really do appreciate all these details. And I want to just take a moment to say, this does happen to be one of those extravagant experiences that some people are fortunate, some might not. I have seen something just as impactful as sitting in the library or, visiting a retirement home. That
100%. I could even make this for, hey, my experience working at McDonald's, for example. Kitchen is hot. The
100%.
smell of fries, blah, blah. That you could tell
Yeah.
your story and make the point. It's just, it shows how much impact that story has had on your behavior. And can you explain that with words? Remember, this is a test of your communication skills. That's the whole point.
Absolutely. So then, do you want me to carry on with the rest of the body of paragraphs? Sure. Okay. So the first body of paragraph transitions this way. For me, the strength of a person's character is defined by their ability to act on their values and stand up for what they believe in. Having strong moral values only becomes a power agent of change when one is willing to follow through on them with action. Situations such as this one, where I feel sinking sensation deep in my gut, help me to cue to conflicts with my own values, prompting me to gather more information, thus taking the first step towards informed action. That is a very strong takeaway. Initially, as I'm reading that, I sense maturity, like the level of maturity and awareness, vulnerability, right? Talking about this sinking sensation deep in their gut. They're exposing that they're nervous. They're not going to just say that they know everything and that they felt ready for this role. So I immediately am drawn to that. I don't know, Bruce, you picked up on anything else?
No, that was good.
Okay, continuing on. In this situation, the knots in my stomach came from being asked to participate in the celebration of female genital mutilation, a practice which is decidedly against my personal values of reducing human suffering and promoting women's rights. My visceral reaction came specifically from the idea of watching while doing nothing to intervene. Further, I worried that as students, our groups would be woefully ill-equipped to navigate nuances of the situation, potentially resulting in harm to our relationship with the community. Plus, due to our association with a medical organization, our presence could be misinterpreted as an endorsement of the safety of these procedures, with the potential to do harm and without an actionable plan in place for stopping genital mutilation. I concluded that I could not, in good conscience, attend the ceremony. So I would say in this case, I do see slight words or, just could come across with like advanced vocabulary. But in this case, I do want to stress that it does work because it's consistent. In the case where we're saying, don't be verbose, like don't sit there and say, let me highlight this and see the synonym, and I'm going to just choose the most complex word to replace it. You could tell this person is a bit more mature, their vocabulary is advanced because you can just see it in the structuring. It's not someone pretending to be something they're not. So if it's genuine to who you are, you could stick to your regular vocabulary, but keeping in mind the people reading it, the admissions might not be up to that par of your vocabulary. So, being concise and being direct with language is actually more effective, and the safe bet is what I would say. All right, continuing on, and I think this is the last paragraph for this prompt. Though I had decided that I could not go, I still felt concerned about the potential impact of the group's attendance and wanted to gain more insight into the situation before deciding on a course of action. I shared my concerns with my partner and another student. My partner agreed with me and decided to consult his physician father. We quickly learned that the Canadian physicians are not legally permitted to condone female genital mutilation, meaning that our attending the ceremony could have legal ramifications for our physician-run organization. With this information in hand, I knew I had to contact the organization lead about the excursion. She forbid our group from attending, requesting that I inform the other students who are obviously disappointed that had gotten the trip canceled. Though I believe my course of action, this is the conclusive paragraph, was the right one and I would not change the outcome. Looking back, I wish I had voiced my concerns earlier. It may have made the end result easier for the other students to swallow. In spite of this, being honest when expressing my discomfort with a situation and choosing an alternative course of action that is aligned with my values has never led me to make a decision that I regret. Though standing up for what you believe in and doing what is right is not always easy, it is always worth it and arguably the only way of living a life without regrets. So very well done for this prompt. So I don't think I've read anything like this, even if someone's had a similar experience, just the way it was conveyed.
That's the reason this person is in Harvard now.
There you go. And then even I want to say what's important is, if you details aside, specific words aside, the student was able to communicate. And for me, as you know, someone that's looking into the types of students that I want at the program, communication was there, collaboration was there. And it was done in, you know, a very subtle way, that it was second nature to the student. It wasn't forcefully, I collaborated with my team. Exactly. I communicated, like very forcefully put in there. It was just like, I had to call, I had to tell my friend, we had to work together. I had to tell my teammates. So I would say that communication was done well. Ethical, moral obligation was upheld, although let's just say in this context, it made sense. It's not always going to be applicable to every other context. Your moral obligation might not be aligned with what's legally allowed. So you're going to have to be tactful in how you approach that, because when you undergo, obviously, and you're going to participate in a program or whatever the case might be, you're at that point agreeing to adhere to that. So I would say that's a different topic altogether. But in this case, this individual was vulnerable, honest, collaborative, and communicated very well. And the takeaways were just very mature and impressive.
They answered the question perfectly.
100%.
Essay prompt was done fantastic. So that was it for us. Today, we taught you how to write fantastic essays based on your own personal experiences. Doesn't matter what they are. The same thing I could have written, what we just showed you, if I didn't have any fancy, you know, trips or experiences and I just worked at McDonald's. I could still write something like that if you follow the rules we've given you. We told you about the red flags you have to avoid, and when we wrapped up with an example so you saw exactly how that can be done in practice. I hope this is going to help you write your own from scratch. If you enjoyed this, go ahead and share it with a friend. Give us a like on whatever social media channel you're watching this, and hopefully we'll talk to you soon. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Bye, guys.